All right, so today we're going to put together kind of a mental blueprint, a guide, really, for anyone who wants to build a modern app. We're going to look at two super powerful tools from Google, Dart and Flutter. And trust me, they are completely changing the game for developers out there.
So have you ever had a great app idea? You want it on iPhones, on Androids, on the web, maybe even on desktops. The old way of doing this, well, it was a nightmare. You'd have to write and maintain totally separate, really complex code for every single one of those platforms. But what if you could do all of that with just one single code base? I mean, think about that. That's the huge game-changing promise of Flutter. The whole idea is you write your code once and you can deploy it pretty much everywhere. It's an absolutely massive time and effort saver.
Okay, so let's get our terms straight right from the start. Flutter. It's what we call a UI toolkit. Basically, it gives you everything you need to build the part of the app that people see and touch. The buttons, the text, the layouts, the whole shebang. But the really key phrase here is natively compiled. What does that mean? It means your app is going to have fantastic, snappy performance. It'll feel like it was custom built for whatever device it's running on.
And the language that actually makes all of this Flutter magic happen? That's Dart. Dart is specifically designed, optimized for building the client side of apps. That's everything the user actually sees and interacts with. And the way it's designed, well, it's what makes the whole development process so incredibly fast and efficient.
So here's a quick look at our roadmap today. We're going to start with the absolute foundation, which is all about widgets. Then we'll figure out how to arrange them into a proper UI. After that, we'll make our apps smart with something called state. Then we'll check out the developer's toolbox. And finally, we'll see what it takes to bring it all home.
All right, let's dive into the absolute heart of Flutter. Seriously, if you remember only one thing from this whole explainer, make it this. In Flutter, everything is a widget. That piece of text on the screen? Yep, that's a widget. That button you're about to tap? Also a widget. Even the very structure that arranges other widgets, you guessed it, it's a widget too.
Now the key idea here is this phrase, immutable descriptions. It sounds a little technical, but it's simple. Just think of a widget as a blueprint for a piece of your UI. The blueprint itself, the drawing on the paper, it doesn't change, right? It's a fixed plan. All it does is describe what a piece of the UI should look like at one specific moment. What's its color, its size, what text does it have? It's basically a static recipe.
Okay, so this brings up a really important question. If these widgets are just static blueprints, how in the world does an app actually do anything? How does a counter number go up when you press a button? Or how does a checkbox actually show a check mark when you tap it? How does it all come alive?
Well, the answer is that there are two main types of widgets. First, you've got your stateless widget. Think of this for UI that never, ever changes. Like a company logo or the title of a page. It's static. Then you have the stateful widget, and this is for all the dynamic parts. It holds on to something called state, which is just data that can change, and its whole job is to tell Flutter, hey, redraw me whenever that data gets updated.
Okay, so we have our building blocks, our widgets. Now it's time to actually build something. Assembling a user interface in Flutter is all about composing these widgets. Basically, you're just nesting them inside of each other to create the overall structure of your blueprint.
Let's look at three of the most fundamental layout widgets you'll use all the time. First, you have a row. Pretty straightforward, right? It just arranges things next to each other, horizontally. Then there's a column, which, you guessed it, stacks things on top of each other, vertically. And then you've got stack, which is super cool. It lets you overlap widgets, perfect for putting, say, a play button on top of a video thumbnail. So you could build a user profile with a column, and then inside that column, you'd have a row for the follow and message buttons.
So, a beautiful layout is awesome, but it's really just the start. To be useful, an app needs to be able to remember things and react to what the user is doing. And this is where we get into something called state management. It's all about giving our app a brain and a memory.
So what exactly is this state thing we're talking about? Honestly, it's just any piece of information in your app that can change over time. It could be the number of likes on a photo, it could be the items you've added to your shopping cart, or even just the text you're typing into a search bar right now. It's the living, breathing data of your app.
So how does this actually work with one of those stateful widgets we mentioned? It's really just a simple three-step dance. First, something happens, right? A user taps a button. Second, your code updates the data. And then, this is the key part, it calls a special function called setState. That call is the crucial signal. It's like yelling to Flutter, hey,
something important just changed over here. And finally, Flutter hears that, and it rebuilds the widget, using the new data to draw the updated UI on the screen. Simple as that.
All right, now let's talk about the fun stuff. The tools that make building apps with Flutter so fast and, honestly, so enjoyable. This is where a lot of the magic really happens.
First up, there's a feature that developers absolutely love. It's called Hot Reload. And let me tell you, this thing completely changes the game when it comes to the speed of building and tweaking your app's interface.
Get this. When you save a change in your code, Hot Reload injects it into your running app in less than a second. And this is huge. It does it without losing your app's current state. So imagine you're deep inside your app and you want to tweak the color of a button. You just change the code, hit save, and boom! Before you can even look up, the change is right there on the screen. You don't have to reload the whole app. You don't have to navigate back to that screen. It's just there. It is that fast.
Okay, so your essential toolkit is pretty straightforward. You'll need a code editor, something like VS Code or Android Studio. You'll manage all your project's add-ons, we call them packages, in a file called pubspec.yaml. And where do you find these packages? On the official hub, which is called pub.dev. And for when things go wrong, and trust me, they will, Flutter DevTools gives you this amazing suite of tools to debug and see exactly what's happening under the hood.
So, we've covered the foundation with widgets, the structure with layouts, and the tools that make it all happen. But what's next? How do you go from a basic prototype to a really polished, production-ready app? Let's take a quick look at those final steps. Getting your app over the finish line really comes down to a few key areas. You want to apply consistent theming and styling to give it a professional, branded look. You'll probably add some slick animations to make the user experience feel really fluid and alive. Of course, you've got to write tests to make sure everything is reliable. And then, the final step, deploying your app for the whole world to see. And when it comes to testing, Flutter is actually super robust. It kind of breaks testing down into 3 layers. You've got unit tests, which are for checking one tiny isolated piece of code. Then there are widget tests, which check that a single widget, like a button, looks and behaves exactly the way it's supposed to. And finally, you have integration tests, which run on a real device and test an entire user flow from start to finish.
And that really brings our whole overview to a close. We started with this big idea of a single codebase. We laid the foundation with widgets, we structured the layout, we made it smart with state, and we got our toolbox ready. You now have the complete blueprint to get started.
The real power here is just how efficient this all is. It opens up this incredible possibility of taking your ideas and bringing them to a massive audience, on mobile, on the web, on desktop, all from one single unified effort. So with one codebase and pretty much endless possibilities, the only real question left is, what are you going to build?